Tonight's lecture is a follow-up, really, from last week. Last week we covered the 11th principle of our emunah, our faith. There are 13 principles that are fundamental, important, basic concepts that every Jew should know. Not only should he know them, but he has to believe in them, he has to be cognizant of them, aware of them at all times. And last week was a very difficult principle for many to understand. It dealt with sachar va'onesh, reward and punishment. Reward and punishment basically says that this Akadosh Baruch Hu, that by now we know who he is approximately, we know how he operates. We don't always understand why he does certain things. We do know, however, that this world is not hefker. Hefker means that life is not, you can just do anything you want. One is responsible, one is accountable for his actions, and at some point there will be what they call in English payday. Even though it appears to us, tzaddik l'ra'lo rasha v'tovlo, that the righteous, the good people are suffering, and the bad people, the evil people are prospering, are having an easy time. That's what our eyes see. He has a ledger where everything is recorded, everything is taken care of at some point. So we don't have to despair and give up, chas v'shalom, by thinking, where's justice? There is justice. We may not always see it. Man does not live long enough to understand everything that is going on. Nevertheless, tonight's topic offers a glimpse. It offers a little bit of an understanding of why certain things happen. So that's why it's a follow-up to last week on why do certain things happen that we can't figure them out. Very difficult to understand. It appears that they're not fair, that there's no fairness and there's no justice. So I always like to talk about the topic of Gilgul Neshamot, as it is called, reincarnation. Reincarnation is a topic that not too many people are very familiar with. They may have heard about it, right? But they're not very, very familiar with how it works. And this topic really gives a lot of explanations to many, many other subjects that we don't have enough clarity to understand what's going on. By understanding reincarnation, we gain a lot of clarity into other subjects as well. So let me give you a quick introduction about what this reincarnation really is. It is an area of mysticism, let's call it, that is known or has been known throughout the history in many, many cultures and many religions. So if you were to do some research, if you were to do your homework, you were to read books on all kinds of religions, which I don't recommend you do, but if you were ever to read about other civilizations, you may come across something called reincarnation, especially in Hinduism, where it is very, very well known. Today, we live in a Western, civilized, progressed, advanced, technologically developed world. And there are all sorts of tools to figure out all kinds of things. The problem is that we have competition with science. The reason I call it competition is because there are a lot of scientists who don't want to accept anything that is not scientific. But for those who have an open mind, we have quite a few tools today that we did not have in the past to measure, to see, to observe all kinds of things that were not possible in the past. Plus, the world has become a smaller place. There's internet, there's videos. We can record things, whether it's audio or visual, and we can get information from all over the world almost instantaneously. One of the methods that has been used recently to prove in a semi-scientific way that reincarnation is real is by something called hypnotic regression. Mm-hmm. Many of you have heard of hypnosis, right? Mm-hmm. Hypnotism, I should say. Yeah, well, hypnotism, is a useful tool sometimes to try to accomplish different things with the patient who's being hypnotized. But regressive hypnotism takes sometimes the patient to previous lives. He all of a sudden begins to recall memories of the past. memories that were not with him while he was awake. He sometimes even begins to speak in a different language that he never studied, never knew. So somehow, this should be able to prove that reincarnation is real. I mean, researchers have gone out and investigated facts that this man or woman are saying that they used to live 350 years ago in a castle in Ireland. And they gave a name. And the cemetery is still there, and they went, and the researchers found the name on the grave of this person. So that many of the details that are being told by these patients, by these individuals who are being checked out, have been proven to be real. So, of course, there's always going to be skeptics. There are always going to be people who are going to try to find flaws in this, and that's why it has never been perhaps proven to everybody's satisfaction. But that's okay. You know why that's okay? Because that's part of Hashem's way of allowing for free will. If everything would be so clear and obvious, you'd have a lot of people doing teshuvah, a lot of people becoming more and more religious, at least believing in God, that there is a soul after all. So you're always going to have some individuals who are going to deny it or put holes into it, try to find mistakes. But it is apparently, I have not looked into it too much, but it is apparently a method by which one can see that reincarnation is real. The Hari, Rabbi Saklunia, Zechet Tzadik Levracha, with his student, Rav Chaim Vital, did put together Sefer HaGilgulim. It's a famous book that was printed recently about all kinds of reincarnation of all sorts of rabbis and all sorts of prophets, who they were in the previous life, who they ended up being in the next life. It's a fascinating book that sheds more light on this topic. And today, there are quite a few articles, books, and of the non-Jews as well, that have documented all kinds of incredible stories that the only explanation for it is reincarnation. Take, for example, you can find it on the internet. There's a young boy, maybe even actually more than one young boy, who from the time he was 2 years old loved to play with planes. He was obsessed. And as he was getting a little bit older, he had nightmares of being shot down in a plane. And what does a 2-3-year-old boy see on TV? You shouldn't say it's coming from TV. Bugs Bunny, is that what they call it? All these things children see. Cartoons. And eventually the details started coming out, So what's your name? And he gave a name that's different than him. And where were you shot down? In Iwo Jima, World War II. And what kind of a plane were you flying? So the father and the mother, had to call experts. They had to do some research, and it turns out that this boy, who he calls himself James, was supposedly an American flyer who was shot down by the Japanese in Iwo Jima. And this is not just one story. There are many similar stories of kids, for some reason, some kids, not all kids, but some kids remembering or having memories of past lives. So as I said, today we have quite a few sources that prove that this is real. Most reincarnations, however, are forgotten. Even though most of us are reincarnated, and you will see as I talk about it more, you will see why that is so. Most of us forget about it because it would interfere. Having past life memories, as it is, our minds are congested. We're all stressed out. We have enough to worry about as it is. To think about our past lives, it's just not, it's not a good idea. The Gemara says that there's so many creatures in the air, all kinds of creatures, including demons, angels, all kinds, that if the eye could only see them, he would go crazy. It would be too much traffic, so much congestion, so much going on, we would go crazy. We wouldn't be able to live a normal life if our eyes could see everything there is to see. Just imagine if you can see with your 2 eyes all the bacteria in the air. You could see it with powerful microscopes. But imagine if you could see it. You'd be watchful where you'd be going, right? It's all full of bacteria. What's a bacteria? It's something almost invisible to the naked eye, at least. So there are many things that, Baruch Hashem, we cannot see or we cannot hear with our human limitations for our own benefit, for our own good. So in the same way, Reincarnations are forgotten. Past lives usually are forgotten. What brings back memories? These children, is something unusual. All of a sudden they start talking. It is unusual. It's not your typical. What's more typical? You're going down a street and you say, wait a minute, I was here before. I've seen this before. Where did I see this? Now, most of the time, what they call in French déjà vu, that you've seen there, you've observed already, that experience is in a dream. You've seen it in a dream perhaps when you were a teenager, 20, 30 years ago. Yes, it could have been many years ago. And now, where did I see this? You saw it in a dream. Most likely it's a dream. But it is possible that what you're seeing or what you're experiencing is from a past memory. That's possible too. So a dream is another way by which we sometimes recall memories of past lives as well. What's interesting about this topic is that for many, many years, even in Judaism, which does have a part of it that is dedicated to mysticism, this particular area called Gilgul Neshamot was unknown. Even to the greatest rabbis, there were some rabbis who were opposed to it. It says, Ma pitom, Gilgul Neshamot? What, Neshama leaves this world and comes back? What are we, recycling souls upstairs? It's not written in the Gemara. It's not exactly written in the Tanakh, in the Chumash. Where did this come from? Now these rabbis, great rabbis, and many, many Jews who were expressing their doubts about it, I can understand why, because they had no access to the Kabbalah. Remember, Kabbalah, which is the mystical area of Judaism, of Torah, was not known to the masses, to the many. And there were no classes like today, all over the place, on Kabbalah. There were no books written on it. Kabbalah was called Kabbalah because it was received, it was transmitted only to very few individuals who were capable of understanding it, of dealing with it. Much of it has to do with abstract concepts, difficult concepts. No, it wasn't meant for everyone. And because of that, not many people knew about this. Zohar, even though it was written by Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai over 1600 years ago, after the destruction of the Second Temple, it was not printed, back then. It was not published. It wasn't a book that people learned until recently, the past few hundred years, where it really became much more known. And there were even questions about who wrote it. There was doubt about that, because there was no direct tradition that he put it together. But that's our understanding, that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, for the most part, put it together. And the Zohar itself talks about Gilgul Neshamot. So Gilgul Neshamot is discussed in the various books of Kabbalah that are available today. But it was not available or not known to the masses. So that is why it was something completely new. But when it was revealed, but once it came out to the open and it was accepted, then, a lot of things began to make more sense because of that. Take, for example, the story of Iyov. We spoke briefly about that last week, about how he suffered so much in his life. The whole story of Iyov, the book of Job, is it called in English? Mm-hmm. Right? Is it Job or Job? Job. Okay. It looks like Job. Yeah, it's written the same way, but anyway. I guess Job had a job. Yeah. So anyway, he suffered a lot. He suffered greatly throughout his life. Not entire life, but a good portion of his life. But pain and suffering that nobody else could imagine having it. And according to one tradition, he was the Gilgul of Terach. You know who Terach was? The father of Abraham Avinu, a man who worshipped idols. And this was his tikkun, perhaps. This is one way for him to atone. So there are individuals like that throughout history. There's an incredible story of a big tzaddik, Talmid Chacham, who was killed, murdered by a goy during the days of the Baal Shem Tov. And the students of the Baal Shem Tov asked, is that what's coming to this tzaddik? Does that he deserved that? Zu Torah vezu schara, he learned so much. He says, you don't know who he was. He's the one that killed Zechariah Hanavi. He's the one that threw a stone on him or killed him. The prophet had a hard time with some people didn't want to listen to what he had to say. And his punishment is to come back in every generation, and he gets killed. He gets murdered. So he's that reincarnation of that individual. So there are people who come back. And I'm going to give you some more examples later on. Individuals who come back for a variety of reasons. So once we understand this topic, we're going to be able to figure out all sorts of things, why they are the way they are. At times, however, something incredible is revealed. There's a big commotion about, like for example, with this child, or with some other incident in Israel that everybody talks about, like with the dibuk, with the possessed soul. Even though people are trying to say that's not true, I have to assume it is because of certain facts. Why do they happen from time to time? Why do these things come out in the open and are made public? Once in a while, Baruch Hashem, they are made public, because on a regular basis, we said before, it would intervene or interfere with our free will. If things would be too obvious. But once in a while, Hashem shows, you see, this is true after all. This case of Gilgul Neshamot, of Dibukim, must be true. Because look at what's this. Remember, you will always have the Letzanim, the mockers, the scoffers, the ones who will ridicule it. You will always have people like that. There's no way to stop them. But if you look at the facts and you know that from our sources, then you will see, oh, Hashem from time to time does send us an incident that will strengthen our emunah, especially at times when the emunah is so shaken and so down and people are depressed. Wow! It really gives a lot of encouragement to people when they see for a fact. The guy who they thought was dead and gone and consumed perhaps by sharks in the ocean, or his body was turned to ashes in Auschwitz, he comes back in a dream. Wait a minute, how could you come back in a dream? How does somebody come back in almost real looking in a dream and communicate with you as though he was alive if he's gone? Also, of course, the scientists will say it's all in the memories. It's in the back part of your head, on the right side and the left side, and this node and that. Shtuyot, right? It's all nonsense. We know for a fact that if the person comes back in a dream, especially if he tells you, by the way, the papers that you're looking for, I left them in that closet. Well, what's that? That's also some memory, some coincidence? When it actually gives you real factual information? What's that? There's many, countless stories about such dreams. Many. That we know some dreams are real. Most of them are not, but some are. So when you see these kind of things, you say, wow, so there is something called a neshama. It's not gone. It's around somewhere. And it helps people who have gone through difficult times with loved ones that they no longer have, who were either killed or just died, and they were very attached to them. And here you see, well, they're not exactly gone. They're still around. They know what's going on here, and they're hopefully in a better place. So that's why I believe that this is an important topic to talk about. Gilgul Neshamot also not only proves sheyesh hasharat nefesh, that the nefesh, the soul, the spirit, continues to exist, but it sometimes comes back. Gilgul is like a wheel. Sometimes we come back, and we repeat life. So the question is why? Well, last week when we spoke about tzaddik veralo rasha vetovlo, sachar ve'onesh, reward and punishment, some people having a difficult life, some people having an easier life, we said that many times that for the most part it has to do with mazal, something called mazal. Mazal means predestined. It's a predestined life. We have free will in some areas, but life is predestined. And everybody's going to have a certain life according to what they predestined 40 days before the formation of the fetus. 40 yom kodem yetzirat havlad. He will be wealthy, he will be poor, he will be middle class, he will be smart, he will be a genius, he will be not so smart, tall, short. What they don't say is whether one will be a tzaddik or rasha. That's up to us. Otherwise, if that also determined, then we're robots. So free will, for the most part, is only the area of mitzvot. Are you going to be a good husband, a good wife, a good brother, a good sister, a good friend, a good father, a good mother? How are you going to interact with people? Are you going to perform mitzvot? That's up to us. That you decide. Now, you may have a temper. You may be stubborn. You may be stingy. Okay, that's because of your netiyot, your inclinations that you have by nature. But you could work on it. I've given you the free will, the sechel, to be able to refine your character, to control yourself. So all of that is free will. It's up to you. If you have the proper guidance, and you're in the right environment, and hopefully you have good friends and a good upbringing, and for a Jew you learn Torah, then you will know to distinguish between right and wrong. But everything else, how much money you make, how many losses you will have, at what age you will die, unless you smoke and drink, of course, then you may go early. But if you don't want to go early, and you want to go at the set amount of time, which depends a little bit on the genes too, right? Then just do everything right, eat right, and don't, put yourself in danger. And then everybody will go at a predetermined age from a certain illness, whatever it is. That's all mazal, depending on the mazal he's born. If one's mazal is never to be rich, he's never going to be rich no matter how hard he tries. No matter what he does, he takes 3 jobs, he gets 2 PhDs, it's not going to help him. If his mazal is to be middle class, to be poor, then even if you give him the money, he may be a shlumil or a shlumazel. You ever heard of that? You know what the difference between a shlumil and a shlumazel is? A shlumil is going down this hall, holding a glass of tea, hot tea, and he drops it. That's the shlumil. And what's the shlumazel? The one that gets dropped over his pants. The shlumil dropped a cup of tea, and the shlumazel is the one that had the cup of tea land on him. Then you have a third one, they tell me. It's called the nebuch. He's the one that has to clean up the mess. Anyway, that's mazal. Shlumil, they call it in Yiddish. Shlomazel, which comes from bad mazal, shlumazel. He has no mazal, no matter what he does. You give him the money. Here, take $100,000. I'll help you build your new business. So you build it up, no customers. Or he does things wrong, or he loses his money. Somebody comes and cheats him. I'll be your partner. Takes away all the money. That's all mazal. Don't think you didn't do. You should have been more careful. Yes, of course you should be careful. You should be suspicious. You should be very careful. But it's all controlled from above. If it's not meant to be, it won't happen. If it's meant to be, it's going to happen no matter how you try to conceal your money. People think they're going to put the money in Israel, they say under the balatot, under the tiles. They look there too. My famous story is something that happened about 2 years ago. There was a girl, a young woman, who wanted to surprise her mother for her birthday. She bought her a new mattress. So the mother comes home. Yom Huledet Sameach, Ima, happy birthday, I bought you, a beautiful, good mattress. Good for the back, whatever, And what did you do with the old mattress? I threw it out. You threw it out? Oy! I had $1 million in that mattress. Cash. What did you throw it? They ran to the dump. The garbage people were helping them out. It's a true story, it just happened. They couldn't find it. You know why they couldn't find it? Because it was their mazal to lose it, and it was somebody else's good mazal to find it. You think the dump took it? Probably somebody saw a good mattress outside. It was probably they took it. Like they take anything you put out here, after a few minutes it's gone, usually. Right? A chair, a sofa, whatever. That's all mazal. Or it could have been a gezerah, decree mishamayim too. She didn't give enough tzedakah. What, are you going to take it with you to your grave? Imagine this old lady. What do you do with $1 million in him? Now, why'd she put it why'd she put it in the mattress? Either it was illegal, who knows, not reported, or she didn't believe the banks. I don't know why. So in Israel they do all kinds of things like that. The thieves know about these tricks. They check the walls, they check the tiles. They already know these tricks. If it's meant to be, it's going to happen. That's called mazal. But the question is, why do people have this mazal and some people have this mazal? That's the question. That's where we left off last week. We understand Tzaddik V'Ralo Rasha V'Tov. We understand it's Hashemayim. We have Emunah. But why Hashem? We will never have all the answers. Remember that. We will never have all the answers. But part of the answer has to do with mazal. It's this mazal like that. Yeah. But why does he have such a good mazal and he has such a poor mazal? That nobody had the answer to until they were introduced to Gilgul Neshamot. So before anybody knew that there is such a thing called reincarnation, nobody can understand why he was born with this mazal and he was born with this mazal. The only thing the big rabbis could say at the time is, that's your challenge and that's his challenge. He got a lot of money, so his challenge would be how is he going to use the money? Is he going to be a giver? Is he going to share his wealth? And that man will have a nisayon that is struggling. So that's true too. Everybody has a different mission. Everybody has a different challenge. That's true regardless. But why? What's the source of him getting this and not the other? That many times has to do with the previous reincarnation. Now, why does it work like that? First of all, what we see so far is that Akol be'ashgacha. Everything is by divine providence. There is supervision. Everything is directed from above. Olam hazeh is called Olam ha'ma'asi. It's a world of action. It's a physical world. It's Olam ha'tikun, as the Kabbalah says that we're here to accomplish something. Olam haba is Olam ha'gemul. Olam haba is the place where we are rewarded for our actions. Because of that, because we're supposed to accomplish something here, when a human being is born, he's never complete. Look at a baby, how he's crawling. He doesn't even have his teeth yet. Little by little he develops. He's so dependent on his parents. He's so dependent on other people for a long time. And the reason for that is because man has to perfect himself. That's part of his mission. Each one has a unique mission, unique to him. But as a whole, humanity, regardless of your religion, we all have to perfect ourselves. We all have to perfect our character. We have to do good maasim. We have to learn to be givers and not just takers, recipients. Because we receive Baruch Hashem a lot of blessing, shefa, health from Hashem. But we're supposed to be givers. And that is why not everybody decides to be a lawyer. Oy vavoy if everybody will be a lawyer. Right? Imagine everybody wanting to become a lawyer. But Baruch Hashem, some people want to be doctors, some people want to be plumbers, some carpenters, some teachers, some scribes. Right? Some garbage collectors. Did you ever think about that? Garbage collector. They pay well, by the way. Good benefits, fringe benefits. But who wants to be a garbage collector? Not everyone, but some people do. I don't know if it's very long hours, but it's a good job. Especially to do it with the automated cars. Unless you live in New York, I think they still do it by hand over there. But over here, you sit in your car, it's air conditioned, and the machine pulls up the garbage can. So Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu distributed jobs evenly throughout the world. Not everybody's in the same business, not everybody has the same job, because there's an interdependency here. We need each other. And because we need each other, each one has a different tafkid, as it's called in Hebrew. Each one has a different mission, a different job. So therefore, what really happens is that as we go through life, some people don't complete what they were supposed to do. Either because they died early. Soldier goes to war. He steps on a mine. War is dangerous. What can you do? He was only 18 years old. He didn't finish. Didn't get married, didn't have kids. Didn't finish. He was supposed to live to 81, according to his mazal. But something happened that cut his life so short. So what's going to happen? That's it? He has to come back to finish, la'ashlim. Or then you have another situation. Because human beings do have free will as opposed to animals, Adam yachol lekalkel. Man has the ability to ruin the world. He can be destructive. Look at all the destruction, all the wars, all the hatred, all the stealing, the killing. That's kilkulim. Hashem gave us a beautiful world. It's so nice. Everything is so right. Everything is so perfect. Vayal Hashem kitov, as it says in the beginning of creation. Everything Hashem made is good. Man is the one that unfortunately mekalkel. He ruins it. He damages it. Oh, you damaged it? Imagine somebody coming to your house, he's a guest, and he breaks something, unintentionally of course. He feels terrible, I hope. And hopefully he will buy you something equivalent to it, to compensate you for it. He damaged your home. You did him a favor, you invited him, you gave him a meal, whatever, you treated him nice, and he damaged. Even though it was unintentional, it's a kilkul. Pay for it. So Hashem gives us a chance, le'ashlim u'letaken. Le'ashlim means to redo and complete what was left undone business. And letaken means to repair what was mekulkal, what we damaged, what was unfortunately destroyed, what became defective as a result of our actions. So in Olam HaGemul, if we reach there, we're all okay, we did our job, in Olam Hagul, in the world of reward, we will be compensated. But there comes a point that sometimes the person reaches the Olam Haemet, and they tell him, hey, you can't go to your final resting place yet. There's unfinished business. So many times a person goes there, spends a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, sometimes even a couple years, then he heads back down. And because he heads back down in a second Gilgul, what the second Gilgul really implies, what it means, is that it's a second chance to do what was not done right the first time. And because of that, Judaism puts a lot of emphasis on immediate burial. Bury the dead person as soon as possible, because so long as his old body is still in this physical world unburied, he cannot come back in a reincarnation, according to Kabbalah. The Kabbalah explains that reincarnation cannot happen until the first body is put to rest. You have to put him in the ground. Only then can he come back. And many times you may have noticed, as soon as one individual was buried, the next day you hear Mazal Tov, so-and-so, cousin, nephew, grandson, had a baby boy. B'shara tova. It very possibly could be that that man or that woman was immediately reincarnated into the baby that was just born. Wow. And that's why you don't want to hold it back. You don't want to hold back a person unnecessarily from burial, because he cannot come back. Cannot come back down into this world until the first body is buried. Yes?
And what happens if you have someone who died in the wilderness, or someone, and there was no one to bury him, or who died at war and is just laying dead in the battlefield?
At some point, somehow, the body is disposed of. Right? I mean, somehow it will disintegrate over time.
Yeah, but not the skeleton.
What is that? Not the skeleton too. At some point it will be covered up. It may take a lot of time with the winds and all that, and the sand. The things don't stay around like that, you know. But hopefully, if you know, they will find it. You know, hopefully at some point they will find it. It doesn't mean that that individual needs to be reincarnated. I'm just saying that if it needs to be reincarnated, we want to bury the old body as soon as possible.
Or what about if the body is destroyed?
Makes no difference.
Like with
so it's gone. If there's no burial, then the body's destroyed. You have all the ashes. You know, it's a form of burial. Yeah. We don't know exactly. And you're asking questions about the details of what happens to the body if it's like this or that. We don't really know. All we do know is that it's important to bury as soon as possible, because that helps. That's what the neshama is waiting for, in order for it to be able to come back down and start life in a new body, in a new physical body. The importance of completion or making up is because once we are upstairs, there's no more chance to do anything. Our children that we left behind can do a little bit. That's the importance of Kaddish, learning Mishnayot, giving charity for those who are deceased. But they really can't do on their own almost anything for themselves. So who can? Only they. When they come back a second time. You know what happens sometimes? It could very possibly be that one's father or uncle in this life, when he comes back, he's your son or your nephew. Even though in the past life he was your dad. He was your uncle. It could be that if he needs to come back again, in the next life, of course, he's not going to be your dad or your uncle, he's going to be a nephew. Usually it's a nephew, uncle, not necessarily father, son. Usually it's that kind of a relationship. Or grandson, perhaps. But so those who you knew, or you had a relationship with in the previous lifetime, will tend to come back within the same family. They may be, of course, this time around, there may be a different kind of relationship with them. So what's the significance of finishing or completing the mission that we did not finish? Why is that so important? Imagine, have you ever heard the expression some people say when they're in the older years, 60, 70, I wish I could do it all over again? Some people express themselves that way when they get into their later years. I wish I can do it all over again. If I could do it all over again, I would have done it differently. You know, now we're chachamim. After the fact, we're chachamim. If I can only relive my life, get married again, have the children over again, I know how I would do it differently. Well, guess what? If you're still young, somewhat, up to 75, 80, you're still young, right? It's never too late. It's really never too late. You can do a lot of things over again. Mistakes that were made, you can fix some mistakes. What's very difficult to fix is kids that were grown up in the wrong way. That, because they have their own free will. How can you bring them back? But you can change yourself a little bit. You can change your relationship. Imagine a husband telling his wife, from now on, and he does this at the age of 67, 68. From now on, you are my queen. Right? So the wife tells him, you always say that. Yeah, she doesn't believe him. But now I will prove it to you. Okay, well he has a chance, B'ezrat Hashem, for the next 20 years, or as long as Hashem gives him, to prove it. So if man or the woman can prove to each other, to prove it, not just words. Words are cheap. To prove that they're willing to make a change, it's possible for as many years that you have left. It's never too late to do teshuvah. For Hashem, if Hashem accepts teshuvah, then a husband and wife should accept each other's teshuvah, if it's sincere. And the only way you can demonstrate sincerity is by actions, not words. Words are very nice, but they have to be supported by actions. And people can do all kinds of small things too. The man never took out the garbage. He was always lazy. He says, come on, you do it. Or let somebody else do it. He never wanted to do it. Now he begins to do it, even though it's hard for him. At the age 67, 68, he's already, he's not in the same physical condition as he was when he was in his 20s. But he says, for you, anything, honey, So he really tries. And if she sees that he really tries, it makes a big difference. It really makes a difference because he's trying. He really regrets the past. He's pained by the past. He realizes that the mistakes cost him the relationship. And the same is true with father or mother and kids. The father says, listen, my kids, I know I was hard on you. Haiti kapdan gadol. I was very strict, demanding. You had to be the best student. There are some fathers like that. They're crazy, obsessed about grades. Even though, of course, every father would love his kids to do well. But you have to be careful not to be a kapdan, overly strict, demanding. It's not a good midah. The father says, listen, kids, even though I'm over 50 now, right? I want to have a better relationship. I made mistakes. If he says it sincerely and the kids are normal, they should accept it too. They should accept it, because we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So if one admits them and starts all over again, even though he's in his later years, whatever remains of his life will definitely look different than in his earlier years. But just in case he did not, the idea behind Gilgul is a second chance. So Hashem is all chesed, Hashem is all kindness, He's all rachamim, all compassion. Gilgul is not a punishment really, it's called tikkun. It's a form of repairing, it's a form of giving a person a second chance where you can no longer do it once you're up there. What can you do for yourself? So we send you back down, and hopefully this time around, you'll have similar challenges that you had in the past perhaps, but hopefully you'll do it better. Comes along one guy upstairs and says, Borei Olam Hashem, it's not my fault. I grew up in Siberia. I grew up in Vladivostok, if you all know where that is. I don't think you do. Maybe you do. Grew up in Birobidzhan, or whatever. Grew up in somewhere in Siberia. There was not even a Chabad there, Hashem. What do you want from me? It's not my fault. So she says, you're right. You're right. Your father had to go there. For whatever reason, he was working for the Russian company trying to discover gas and oil. Or doing something else over there remote. And many Russian Jews were just deprived of their Jewish heritage, and they just went, just to make a living. So he comes upstairs and Hashem says, now, don't worry about it. This Gilgul, you're going to be in Bnei Brak. Or in Mea She'arim. You have a choice. But I'm going to make sure you're going to be raised in an Orthodox family. So you won't have that problem. You're right, in the past life you had no control. Jews in Russia traveled everywhere. They were deprived, there was communism, difficult times. In the past it was even more difficult when it was during the period of the Tsar. Jews were taken away from their families. Grows up not knowing anything. Of course, upstairs they of course will consider that somebody who did something intentionally versus somebody who did something unintentionally, unknowingly. Ignorance. Even though ignorance is not an excuse, but you still don't have a ticket to Gan Eden. You want to get to Gan Eden? You won't get Gehenom, but you want to get to Gan Eden, to paradise, you want to get to your final resting place? You need a ticket. Ticket is mitzvot and ma'asim tovim, good deeds. You don't have it, you don't have enough. Either you died young, or you just didn't do anything. You played cards in sheshbesh all the time. Backgammon, what do they call it? Yeah. Just you melted away. You just threw away your life because you didn't know any better. Okay, next time, remember, Bnei Brak were Mea She'arim. You won't have an excuse for that. So Gilgul is a second chance. So all these years, all these generations, when we did not have the Kabbalah, you can imagine people had a hard time understanding what will be, why is it like this. People really had a difficult time. But now that we understand a little bit more what Gilgul is and how it works, it really answers a lot of questions. This man is going through a difficult life. Perhaps, we don't know for sure, we don't have a direct line with the Kadosh Baruch Hu to ask him, but perhaps one possibility could be because of a previous Gilgul, a previous reincarnation, a previous lifetime. And as a result of that, this is what he needs to go through this time. It may be something big, something small, something unexpected somewhere at some point in his life, and it's all related to the previous lifetime. So that's what the rabbis meant, ki adin din emet v'akol metukan lesauda. The din that happens to people, the judgment, is always emet. And everything is in preparation for the final seudah, the final meal, which is a description of Yemot HaMashiach, Olam Haba. The Kadosh Baruch Hu does things all in preparation for the future, where we will be, of course, rewarded, and that reward does, of course, take into account everything that we had to go through. So it is all for our benefit. And part of that arrangement that Hashem arranges is called also midah keneged midah. Midah keneged midah means measure for measure, eye for eye. People did certain things, they have to pay for it. A real quick story I may have told you, but it's all related. The guy comes to the Baal Shem Tov, complaining, I have to marry off some daughters and I don't have any money, I lost my money, I can't, I just can't put it together. Can you really help me out? Give me some advice and direction. I don't understand why it's happening to me. I don't understand why I have to struggle so much. People don't have as hard time as I do. Why do I have to be in so much pain? He asks the rabbi. He says, the rabbi tells him, I'm going to give you a letter, don't worry. You're going to go to such and such town. You're going to show them the letter. And the letter will be addressed to a very wealthy guy in town who can help you the most. And so he goes to that town looking for that individual. As soon as the people hear the individual's name that who he's looking for, they say, Yemach Shemo Vezichro. They start cursing the guy. Cursing the guy. What's going on here? This is a wealthy guy supposed to be able to help me with my daughter's the marriage. So they start cursing. One after another, all cursing this. He couldn't take it anymore. So he goes over to a gentleman and says, well, what's going on? What's this guy that everybody's cursing? This guy's been dead for the past 65 years. He was a wicked man. He was so stingy. He didn't share his wealth with anybody. He's been dead. He's not around. He can't help. No, he's dead. You don't believe me? I'm going to take you to the Jewish cemetery. You're going to see his matzeva. You're going to see the tombstone. You're going to see the name. And you're going to see he's been dead for 65 years. He went and he saw. Now he's really puzzled. Baal Shem Tov, why did you send me to this town to this rich guy who's been dead for 65 years? They all cursing him. What's the story? He says, that was you. That was you in a previous life that you wanted to know why you're struggling, you're having a hard time, you're poor, right? Because back then when you had the money, you didn't use it right. Look at the reputation you have. 65 years ago, it's good they don't recognize you now. You look different, different person. But that you want to understand now. The Baal Shem Tov was able to see this guy. Not everybody can see that. But the Baal Shem Tov was able to see why this person was going through what he was going through. Anyway, so how many times can you come back?
7.
Well, it all depends. If you start fixing in every Gilgul, up to 4 times, 3 plus the original. But that's if you don't fix at all. That's it. 4 chances and you're out. You strike out. If a neshama repairs a little bit at a time, every single time a little bit, it can come back even 10, 15 times. Depending if there's a need for it. Only Hashem knows if there's a real need for it. But otherwise, it's limited to up to 4. But many, many people who are around today have been here more than 4 times because they have done some tikkun all along. So when a person does some tikkun all along, it's possible for him to come back a few times. However, there's a famous question. What if he comes back and he ruins it even more? That can't happen. Because the only thing you are able to repair is that portion that needs tikkun. That portion of the neshama that is already okay stays behind. In other words, you cannot do more damage than was done before. Follow me? It's very well organized. Hashem does not put you in circumstances where you can undo and lose all the credit that you've had from before. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. You come back needlessly. It never ends. So that which you have accomplished, that which you have done right, is put away. You cannot destroy that. You can only come to fix, or to not fix, of course, that which remains to be fixed. Yes?
But the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory says that is only referring to reincarnation as a human, but that doesn't mean you can't reincarnate as an animal.
We'll come to that. We're not there yet. Yeah. Baruch Hashem, you already know a little bit about the topic. I haven't gotten to that yet. Yeah, right now we're talking about plain reincarnation in humans. Another question is Tchiyat HaMetim. Okay, if people come back several times, what will happen to Tchiyat HaMetim? Which body will rise? Right? And the answer is most or all the bodies will rise, as long as the body did some tikkun. But how will it be? Who are you? Where are you? Which one are you? Yeah, imagine 5 people. Yeah, this one speaks Farsi, this one speaks Hungarian, this one speaks Spanish, right? English, Hebrew. All different gilgulim, right? They all share the same neshama. Is it possible? Yes. The pasuk says in Mishlei Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The soul of a person is like a candle. You take a candle, how many candles can you light with the original candle?
Unlimited.
Unlimited. With the original flame, you can light many candles. The neshama is a candle. It can split itself. We're not talking about the nefesh. The nefesh is the human spirit that pumps the blood. That each one has his own, that each one gets his own. When they come up, when they are brought back to life, Hashem, the Kabbalah teaches, will give each one a brand new nefesh, which is a lower level neshama. There's nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So nefesh, they may get new ones. But neshama can be shared. And we will be like brothers. The various bodies in various reincarnations will recognize each other more or less, because they will realize that they share the same neshama. So it's possible to share, either through something called nitzotzot, as the Kabbalah teaches, the sparks. People have other sparks from other neshamot, or through portions of the soul being shared in different bodies at different times. If the bodies are okay, if the bodies did something productive, and they were metukan, they will all get up. The bigger question is what happens with one's wife. Now, why is the question about one's wife? Because according to tradition, in Kabbalah, it is taught that most women do not always reincarnate. They do reincarnate at times, but not for the same reasons as men. They don't go through the same tikkun process. Gilgul is a tikkun, and women have their tikkun in Gehenom. Gehenom means that's where they get cleansed for anything that was not done teshuvah properly for while they were alive. So they take care of it in Gehenom, instead of coming back in a Gilgul. They do sometimes come in Gilgul, but not necessarily for a tikkun in the same way as a man does. So a man got married before, and now he's coming back. He doesn't have necessarily always the same wife he had in the previous reincarnation. Unless he says, honey, I loved you so much, can you come back with me again? Yeah, and then she says, really? You want me to come again? So, Bashamayim, they have to have a meeting with them. This one wants his original wife. So, you sure you want her again? Anyway, so sometimes, yes. Sometimes they come back down the same couple. But not always. So what happens? What happens is that everybody has, it's a big subject, and I'll just touch on that very, very briefly, because it's a different topic. People have different connections, different soulmates, not necessarily at one given time, but because the zachar and the nekeva on the level of the neshama upstairs is really one, it's one unit. They split. Male comes down first, and usually the female follows him after a couple of years. Okay, that's in the first Gilgul. But we said before that a neshama can be bigger than just one soul. A neshama can have various parts to it. A neshama can come back down with just one portion of that neshama. So the same thing is true with the nekevot. There are a lot of nekevot, female aspects of the neshama, that are from the same shoresh neshama, from the same root. So when one comes down, It may not be the exact original wife from last time, but it needs to be for it to be successful from the same shoresh neshama. Otherwise, it's not successful. It doesn't go well. Something goes wrong with it. There are people, of course, who marry and somebody who's not from the shoresh neshama for whatever tikkun, for whatever reason it is. They ended up with somebody else. This can happen because it's a zivug sheni. It's a second marriage. This can happen because they married a convert. This can, for a variety of reasons. It doesn't mean it's bad. It could go well too. People can get along, but it's not the original. The original could be gone. Got married to someone else. So it's a complex topic. It's not a topic that we can cover just in 2 minutes. But just briefly, it is possible for a man to bring back his original wife, or at the very least, a woman who belongs to him on the level of the shoresh neshama, from the root of the soul. And if it's from the root of the soul, then it's just as much called zivug, soulmate, as if it would be the original one from last lifetime. It's still a soulmate because it's still part of him. It's still the one that best complements him. It's still the one that was designated. That's the main thing by zivug, means designated. And most of the time what's designated is what's best for you. That's what people don't understand. Whether you had it exactly last time or not. But what happens in Tchiyat HaMetim? Well, you may end up with 2 or 3. Right? That's okay. You'll be able to have 2 or 3 there, Tchiyat HaMetim. Because you may have married more than one during your lifetime, who are from the same root of the soul. And then you have them all. That's okay. Everybody will be happy. There will be no jealousy then. Right now there's a problem of jealousy between the women, or between the men or whatever. Yemot HaMashiach, there's no jealousy and everything will be okay. But anyway, let me go on because otherwise we won't have enough time. Okay, so now that we understand a little bit of how Gilgul Neshamot works, I have to give you a little bit of share with you a scenario which is not so comfortable. The typical Gilgul is a man comes into a man. But there's sometimes the soul of man comes into a woman, and the woman's soul comes into a man. That's not necessarily why some women are behaving like men and why some men are behaving like women. We have that too, running around here. Men behaving like women, women behaving like men. But it could be, and sometimes even if you can't see it, a man has the soul of a woman and a woman has the soul of a man. And that is one of the explanations that Kabbalah gives for akrut. Akrut means sterility, infertility, where a man or a woman cannot have children because their soul is of a different kind. A man who has the soul of a woman cannot have kids. A woman who has the soul of a man can for sure not have kids. I'm not saying that that's always the explanation of why they don't have kids. There's actually a whole list of explanations of why a certain couple may not have children. There's a whole list of reasons. But that is one of them. But why? It's not fair. Remember what we just said? Everything is fair. Everything is din. Everything has to do with some reason. Perhaps it's because of a previous lifetime. It could be because of something that happened here, something that was done here too. But we covered that last week, that sometimes Hashem pays here. But most of the time it's not paid here, it's paid upstairs. Well, if it's paid upstairs, it doesn't mean that it necessarily it will happen upstairs. It could be they will tell me, listen, you're going to come back again, and the second time around, you're going to have to pay for it. Imagine somebody who killed 10 people. I gave this example. How many times can you give him the death penalty? Once. He's dead. But he killed 10. Come back again. Come back again. Well, who knows what else he has to go through? Maybe he has to go through 10 equivalent forms of death. Lose all his money. And get killed. And husband his children. Who knows? We don't know. We don't know exactly Hashem's way of measure for measure. But it's all taken care of at some point. And many times, there's not enough time in one lifetime to take care of everything. So you have to come back with Gilgulim. Now we come to the other form of Gilgul. Not male, female, male, but a human coming into an animal. There have been stories in Israel about a cat going into a Bet Midrash, Bet Knesset, and waiting till the Kaddish is over, then leaving. The cat, the dog, wanted to hear Kaddish. There was a story here in Los Angeles about 22 years ago or so, where a Jew was killed in a motorcycle accident. And during the Shiva, there used to be a dog who wanted to come into the house and go up to the boy's bed during the time of the Shiva. They didn't want to let the dog in. He went to the back door. And he went up the stairs and laid on the boy's bed Until the Shema was done, the dog disappeared. What's that? Why in a dog? That's a separate question. Nevertheless, there are neshamot that come into animals, birds, fish. Famous story in Vienna. My grandfather was in Vienna many years ago. In the old cemetery, there's a tombstone in the shape of a fish. So he looked in the Pinkas, the ledger of the community. There's a story recorded there. There was once a guy who bought a fish for Shabbat. He goes to cut it up. As soon as he's about to cut it up, the fish starts talking, Shema Yisrael. What? What did you say? Shema Yisrael. He goes to his rabbi, the fish is talking, Shema Yisrael. He says, what should I do? I would have told him to just make gefilte fish from it, and eat it for Shabbat. I mean, because it's a tikkun to make beracha on these things, to give it to the poor perhaps. The rabbi for some reason told him to go bury it. It has probably a neshama. And what's that? It's a gilgul in the fish. And usually we have a tradition that tzaddikim come back in fish. Story about 6-7 years ago in Monsey. Not in Monsey, New Square, not too far from Monsey. All of a sudden the Spanish worker heard some sounds coming out of a fish. The end is near. The end is near. Wow, what did you say? What did that? So he ran to his boss, the Jewish boss. The Satan is in the store. He thought it was a Satan, to say. And it turns out that the man who went to hear the fish, the boss, was able to recognize whose voice that was. It was one of his customers. A good, righteous Jew. For some reason, he had to come back in a fish. Tzaddikim, as we say, come back in fish. So, okay. Oh, it's you. He was going to grab him to cut him up. He fell back into the rest of the fish in the tank. So he took them all out and made gefilte fish for everybody. So, story that just happened recently. It was all over. People were calling day and night, calling the boss, calling the store owner to see if that was true or not. So these things happen. The Zohar speaks about goyim coming back in reincarnation, especially the nations of the world, the kings that gave us a hard time, the Nebuchadnezzar, Sancheriv. They're all going to come back. Maybe even Haman is back now in Iran. Yeah, it's possible, really. All these Gilgulim, they're going to come back, so we should see their revenge. So we should see their demise. Because we didn't see it. They died, maybe a natural death. Hashem brings them back in Gilgul, so that we should see the Nekama. So therefore, the Kabbalah explains that a Neshama can come in Domem, Tzomech, Hai, Medaber, in the various levels. Domem, in rocks. Tzomech, plants. High animals, medaber, the highest form of Gilgul being in a human being. And it can go step by step. The only difference is that in a human it doesn't know that it's a Gilgul. In the other levels it knows and it feels bad. It's painful to be in a dog, walk on 4 instead of 2. It feels uncomfortable. So they know, but Baruch Hashem, it only lasts a couple weeks. Maybe a couple months the most. In a human being, a Gilgul can last a whole lifetime. A new life, 75 years. In Domem Tzomech, Hai, they're temporary Gilgulim. There was once a Gilgul in an ox. And he came and told the owner, buy me and slaughter me, give my meat to the poor people. That's my tikkun. An ox, it was a wild ox. And only the guy who had the dream was able to approach this ox. The ox basically laid down and says, slaughter me. And nobody could believe how an ox is letting himself being slaughtered. Only with the guy, who, of course, who he appeared to in the dream. Slaughter me, make a beracha, make sure you do it right. Shechita should be keshera, and give my meat to the poor. That's my tikkun. All kinds of stories. What is this? It's Gilgulim. It's Gilgulim and tikkunim, temporary or long term, for whatever tikkun they need for a previous lifetime. Somebody who hasn't had children, the Zohar says that's the whole idea of mitzvat yibum. Yibum means that you come back. The woman marries the deceased husband's brother. Yibum. And they have a child. That child is a reincarnation from the previous husband who passed away without kids. There's no kids that can be Yibum or Chalitza. Before the woman can marry anybody else, she has to... Today we don't really do it. We just do Chalitza. The woman is released and she doesn't marry the husband's brother. But in the event there were no kids, usually not having kids at all prompts an automatic Gilgul for not having had children. Now there are some tzaddikim who come back, they don't need to really have children. Because Gilgul happens for usually 1 or 3 reasons. Either because of a sin, or a lack of performance in mitzvot, right? Or for the generation. You don't really need it, we're bringing you for the generation. The difference basically is like this. If you come back because of averot, sins, then you will always be tempted by similar sins. If you come back because you did not perform a certain mitzvah, usually you're not tempted by sins as much. If you come back because you don't really need to come back, but Hashem wants you to come back just for the generation's need, then they protect you from all sins, because then you're not coming back because you need to. So depending on what the reason you're coming back for, you may be more or less tempted. So a person who already had children, a person who's a big tzaddik, who's just coming back for something very specific, even though he has no kids this time around, it doesn't mean he's going to come back again for not having kids. He already had. He already performed this himself. So it's not always this case. There are many, many stories, and perhaps depending on how much time we will have left, I will share with you some of the stories, but I'd rather you see right now the video of an incredible incident that happened to a Druze child. The Druze, they're semi-Muslims in Israel who very much believe in reincarnation. It's in Hebrew, a little bit of Arabic, but it's translated into English. And I'm going to project it on this wall so you can see it.
זה התחיל בערך כשהוא היה בערך בגיל 3, בן 3. היה מבטא שמות בצורה נכונה, ואז כל הזמן הוא רצה כביכול לפגוש עז.
הם לא ידעו מי זה העז, הם חשבו שהעז זה השכן שלנו, שקוראים לו אבו לעז.
לא התייחסו. אני בכל אופן, בשבילי, זה היה משהו שאני בכלל לא האמנתי, למרות שאצלנו כולם מאמינים. בשבילי התופעה הזאת היא דבר בלתי אפשרי, שבן אדם יחזור ויזכור. אז כשבאה אחותה של נבילה אלינו וסיפרנו את המקרה הזה, וידענו שהיה אירוע בחודש נובמבר והבן שלי נולד בחודש נובמבר, אז היא הבטיחה לבדוק את זה אצל המשפחה של נוהד אבורקי זכרונו לברכה שנהרג, והבן שלו במקרה קוראים לו גם עז.
ציר הדמים בפיגוע חבלני בבית הממשל הצבאי, שנה בדיוק לאחר שקרץ בניין הממשל בצור וקבר תחתיו עשרות חיילים ושוטרים של משמר הגבול.
נוהד אבורוקון, זיכרונו לברכה, איש משמר הגבול בן 38 מעוספיה, נטמן בחלקה הצבאית בבית הקברות בעוספיה.
אני אדיב. אני האיש שהיה בגלגול שעבר נוהד. ואני שירתי במשמר הגבול. נפטרתי בלבנון, בסור.
הוא חי שתי עולמות, כאילו. עולם של ילד בגיל ילדות, עולם של גבר שהוא זוכר את עצמו כבחור במשמר הגבול, כאבא לילד, כבעל לאישה, והוא דואג להם.
גלגול נשמות היא תיאוריה שקיימת בכל המסורות הרוחניות בצורה פחות או יותר נסתרת. יש מסורות רוחניות שבהן התיאוריה הזו גלויה מאוד, כמו למשל בהינדואיזם ובבודהיזם, גם בדת הדרוזית. בדתות אחרות, כמו ביהדות, היא יותר נסתרת. זה שייך לסוד, למשל הקבלה ביהדות. בנצרות זה גם היה במאות הראשונות, למשל. כך שזו תיאוריה שמאוד נפוצה, ומחקרים מגלים עכשיו שיש כ-70% מכל האנושות כיום שמאמינים בתיאוריה הזו.
יום אחד אני יושב פה, נכנסו אליי, אדיב, שהיה ילד קטן, יושב בגיל 3.5, אבא שלו ואמא שלו. הוא איכשהו נכנס, אמר להם זה נזי. ישבנו פה כמה אנשים וזה. הוא זכר אותי ואמר זה נזי. נוהד, אנחנו באותו גיל כמעט, הוא קצת מבוגר ממני והוא בן דוד שלי. והיחסים בינינו היו אדוקים.
הטיולים אני נזכר בהם, כשהלכנו לטבריה וישנו על הדשא.
על הדשא, על החוף. בילינו, כל החיים שלנו כמעט בילינו ביחד. יותר מהאחים שלי.
متذكر مرة ربقوني كسر الصحوني.
كسر الصحوني كان. הרבה אמרנו כסר אל-קבאבי, כסר הסחוני, כי היה מרביץ עם צלחות, עם כוסות, מה שבא לו ביד
היה זורק על הקירות. ואני ונועד, זכרון לברכה, היינו מנהלים של קבוצת כדורעף. והקבוצה עד היום קיימת על שמו, על שם נועד.
כשהייתי בן 3, אמרתי להורים שלי שאני רוצה את העז הבן שלי. באנו משפרעם לעוספיא, ואני והאמא שלי והדודה שלי הלכנו ברגל לבית שלי שהיה.
אני זוכרת שהלכנו ביחד, הוא רצה שהוא יראה לי איפה הבית של רונית. הוא בא הביתה, נכנס לי כאן כאילו שזה הבית שלו. הוא הכיר את המקום למרות שזה היה לא שלו, אבל הוא הכיר את זה פה. אז גרו אנשים אחרים. הוא התחיל לשאול איפה הדברים האישיים שלו, איפה המדים, הוא התחיל לחפש, אשתו הייתה פה, גם השכנים פה, אנשים. הוא רצה להראות לי, הוא השתכנע בפנים שיש לו הרבה דברים פה.
באתי לי כאן, חיפשתי את המדים שלי, וחיפשתי גם את החפצים האישיים שלי, גם החפצים האישיים. רוצים שאראה לכם את זה? זה החולצת משמעות.
ברגע שהוא ראה את זה, אז הוא התרגש מאוד. אתם רואים? כאילו שהוא רוצה להוכיח את משהו. אז הוא התחיל להראות לנו, את רואה? הנה, את רואה? הנה, אני הייתי, זה מה שאני הייתי.
זה המספר אישי שאמרתי לך, וכמו שאמרתי לך, 4, 4, 6, 6, 5.
שאל את רונית בפגישה הראשונה, אם היא זוכרת אותו.
זאת רונית. זאת האישה שלי שהייתה בגלגול הקודם.
אנשים חשבו שכן נוהד חוזר, לא ידעו שזה ילד קטן שהוא אומר שהוא נוהד, שהוא בא, הנה זה הבית שלי וזה הדברים האישיים שלי, זאת אשתי, זה הבן שלי, והוא החזיק ביד שלו ולא נתן לו ללכת. אז התחילו אנשים פה להגיד לו זה לא עז, זה עז על ילד אחר, להצביע על ילד אחר, הוא לא נתן לאף אחד לשכנע אותו. לי אפילו, אמא אל תאמיני להם, זה הבן שלי, זה הילד שלי, זה שלי, זה עז שלי, ואני מכיר אותו טוב, והוא לא נתן לאף אחד לעבוד עליו או לרמות אותו.
כל יום כשהייתי חוזר מהעבודה והייתי עובד עד שעות מאוחרות, הייתי צריך לבוא לקחת אותו מהבית, כי הוא לחץ עליי, לנסוע עד לעוספיא, להיות שעה, שעתיים עם אשתו והבן שלו, ואחר כך לחזור שוב לשפרעם.
הייתי אז בן 3 וכמה חודשים.
בדרך הייתי מרגיש כמה שהוא לחוץ, רוצה רק להגיע. לפני שהוא הכיר את משפחתו, היו צריכים לסבול בלילות, הוא היה קופץ, צועק, היה מפחד. אחרי שהוא בא וישב עם אשתו ועם הבן שלו והייתי מביא אותו לכאן, הייתי מרגיש שהוא רגוע והוא גם יושן טוב בלילה. והיה גם קורא בשם של סעיד, אל תמות.
سعيد خدم بالمقام بدرجة سمر رشون، وكان يعني قوي وشجاع ويحب كثير، كان مخلص لشغله لعمله، مخلص. نهاد وسعيد كل الوقت يشتغلوا مع بعض يعني وناموا مع بعض. ليلة الحادث كانوا في السريف بياخد.
هي هذا سعيد.
وين سعيد؟
هي
مين حده؟
نهاد.
أول مرة بشوفه الصور.
תמיד כשהילד קטן אנחנו זוכרים היה מספר משהו. זאת אומרת, למה קרה שם? בדיוק ברגע האחרון. זה האירוע שנחרט אצלו בראש. אבל חשוב מאוד גם שהמשפחה פה תשמע, כי זה שותפות גורל בינו לבין סעיד. الولد تذكر اللحظة الأخرانية في الحادث. السؤال إذا أنت معنية تسمعي أو مش معنية تسمعي. أنت مش مصورينك فيه.
أنا عارف.
اسمعي وليش ليه ما تسمعيش؟ اسمعي وشوف شو بيقول عليك. بدكيش تحكي ما تحكيش.
لا أنت تحكيش في اللحظة هاي وصوروكيش فيها.
لما جينا أول ما فتنا على البنيان هذا، أنا وقفت تحت على الكنيسة عند الباب تحت، وهو طلع على الطابق الثاني من الشباك، صار يحكي معي من الشباك، صار يحكي معي. صرنا نحكي يعني، ما حسينا ولا فاتت سيارة، ما شفناش احنا السيارة، فاتت سيارة وفقعت، وسمعنا صوت عالي إنه وفقع كل البنيان. مرة واحدة قام يوقع لحدي من الشباك لتحت. ما حسيت ولا كل الحجارة عليه وصار ينزلوا دم. صوت أقول له ما تموتش سعيد ما تموتش. تمام مات وبعدين أنا بعد يعني
בשיחה עם אדיב אני מאוד התרשמתי מזה שמדובר בילד רגיל, ילד בן 12 שיש לו את התחביבים שלו, את הספורט, את הבית ספר, את החברים, החברות גם שמעתי, כך שמדובר בילד שמציאותי מאוד, שחי את ההווה שלו. השתכנעתי לחלוטין שלא מדובר בפנטזיות או בדמיון שלו לגבי כל הסיפור הזה לגלגול שלו, אלא שמדובר בזיכרונות אמיתיים.
I guess everybody now has a better idea of what a Gilgul is like. As I mentioned earlier, the Druze that this boy belongs to very much believe in this, but it doesn't happen every Monday and Thursday that you actually have such stories where people retell. This boy had a very vivid memory of who he was and how this man in the previous lifetime was part of the Mishmar HaGvul that was killed in a big explosion in Lebanon, and he remembers it all in detail, you know. And I don't know what he thinks of today, but I'm sure he still has those memories from the past. And there are many such stories in India too, of kids being born and remembering who their murderer was. The police did not know who it was, but they did, and they were able to catch later on to figure out because of the testimony of this child who says, you know, that I remember him. This is the one. And of course they investigated and they found out that it was true. Okay, I'd just like to finish with how does one know what he needs to do in this Gilgul? That's a question that I'm asked and something that is not always easy to know. How does one know what he needs to do to accomplish so he doesn't come back again? Right? We don't necessarily want to come back again. We want to, you know, do everything right the first time. One of the ways to know is that if you're being drawn to a particular mitzvah more than others, it could be that this is the mitzvah that you need to specialize with and you have to put extra effort. You're being drawn to something, you like something very much, you enjoy it, and you actually do very well in it. Go ahead and do it. One has to do, of course, everything right, mitzvot, and not just one, but do everything that he needs to do. But if there's one particular area of learning for the men that they like, this time they like Chumash or Kabbalah or Halakha, it could be that they need to specialize in that area that they're being drawn and pulled to. Whereas when it comes to Avirot, if you have a hard time with a particular Avirah, it could be a sign that that's the one that you have to conquer, that's the one that you have to deal with. Because it's that Avirah that's giving you a hard time. When it comes to mitzvot, it's the one you have an easier time with, because the mitzvot is Yetzer HaTov, who's pulling you. Yetzer Hara does not want you to do any mitzvot, but when it comes to Avirot, it's the Avirot that you have a hard time with. So here, it's the mitzvot that you have an easy time with, the limud that you have an easier time with, that's the sign that you have to do. And with Avirot, with those areas in life which you really have a difficult struggle, things that are not exactly right, Avirot, transgressions, those are the ones that you have to focus on. In order that we should actually achieve our tikkun, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it so that we will meet the right people that we need to meet. We will be brought into the circumstances that we need to be in order that we achieve our tikkun. Like I said before, one who needs to be brought up in a religious family, the second time around, Hashem will place him there. He will not make it overall too difficult for him to achieve his tikkun. So if that's what he needs, he will be given the tools, he will be in the right circumstances, and if you're sensitive enough to realize these things, you will see that everything will come your way at the right time in life. Different stages in life where they all have possibly something to do with the previous tikkun, previous lifetime. And that is why a mazal, whatever the mazal is, may be related to a previous Gilgul, because the mazal contains in it the tools that we need to have, that we are equipped with in order to be able to conquer the Yetzer Hara, or to deal with the struggles or particular challenge that we may have had a hard time the previous lifetime. A lot of rabbis in the past, as I said, did not really believe that this could be true. One big rabbi, the way he found out, that he entered the house and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the child in that house, who was only 6 months old, got up. 6 months old to get up, got up and said, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. He says, I'm convinced. You know, the rabbi, this was one of the rabbis who was against it, did not know that this, in fact, exists Gilgul Neshamot. But once he saw that incident of a baby getting up and speaking, he says, apparently Mishamayim, they had to convince him that this is real. Right now we're in a very interesting generation. We're in the generation of Mashiach, and according to our tradition, based on what the Gemara says, the Mashiach will come after Kol Achichlu Kol HaNeshamot Shebaguf, which means basically after all the Neshamot that have to come down would have come down. Which means, according to most Kabbalists today, there are no Neshamot Chadashot. Very few, if any, new souls that have been here, that this is their first time. Most of us are Megulgalim. And because we're so close to Mashiach, what that really means is that there's no more time for Gilgulim too. So we have to do it right the first time around. We better finish the first time around. And for those who have not finished or have not done things correctly over time after time again, sometimes Hashem has to make the tikkun himself. The Shoah, according to the way it's understood by Kabbalists, the terrible Holocaust, and many of the terrible tragedies of Am Yisrael, inquisitions, pogroms, had to do with Gilgulim, had to do with reincarnations, who did not do things right the first time around. And there's no more time left. So sometimes Hashem has to amputate. What's amputation? In order to save the body, you sometimes have to amputate the leg. Unfortunately, of course, for us, the Holocaust was a big, very painful amputation, where we lost 1/3 of our people. But there's no doubt, Shadin Emet, as we started off saying, that the justice is there, right? Hashem does everything for a reason, for a purpose. It could not be that He just ignored us and left us, to the whims of the Nazis. It was all from above. It was a terrible decree, but it's all in preparation of Mashiach. It's therefore not a coincidence that right after such a tragedy, we are going back to our homeland. You think that's a coincidence? And today we have close to 6 million Jews there already. What's going on here? If you pay close attention to the history of the Jewish people, you will see that there's somebody behind it. And of course that somebody is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And hopefully, Yeh Ratzon may be the will of Hashem that we, in our lifetime, of course, accomplish as much as we can, so we do it right the first time around, because there's no more time left. So we should be able very soon, B'ezrat Hashem, to greet Mashiach. Amen.